Big hello from Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome to another episode of B2B Marketing and More with Pam. Yay! Today I have Vidhya Ravi, and she is a UX design researcher at Cash App who transitioned into a UX research from marketing several years ago. She is here to share how her diverse background in marketing and strategy helps her shape her perspective and working in UX research. So welcome, Via. So happy to have you.
Thanks, Pam. It's so exciting to be here.
All right, awesome. So I'm using a term called UX. So can you tell me what UX stands for and also what you do at a Cash App as a UX design researcher?
And that's a great question. One thing I do want to say as we start this talk is that any views that I express today are purely my own, and they're not a reflection or a representative of my employer. So I'm bringing my perspective here to you today about this field. UX is a acronym for user experience. And so a lot of the work I do is focused on how do users or customers or anyone that is interacting with a product, what sort of experience do they have, or what sort of experience do we want to bring to people that will use a product?
So I actually have a Cash App. I know many people do, and the Cash App is so simple to use. Like if you want to transfer money, you can. If you want to buy Bitcoin, yay, super easy. You just hit the buy button and you can buy $500, you can buy $1,000. By the way, I'm not affiliated with the Cash App in any possible way, but I use it just because the simplicity and also the intuitive design. Obviously, I can tell, and just by looking at design, I can say the UX and design is actually part of the product development, I think. So can you tell us in terms of how you work with the product development team to develop, say, features and also the user requirement? How do you bring your experience and to the front end and also the whole product lifecycle?
That is a great question, Pam. And I actually want to take this even broader than just Cash App, because the whole concept of UX and where it belongs in an organization is actually a really hot topic these days. So the concept of research in particular, or UX research, is not really a new field. It's existed in various forms over the last 20 years. You may have heard of people that do things like human factors, for example.
True. Have heard that. Yeah.
Yes, and that's actually a different name for the work that happens in this field. The creation of this craft as a function in itself, called UX research, design research, is a bit newer. And where it lives really depends on the influence of where the company wants this particular insight to live. And that actually changes from company to company. So in some cases, UX might ladder up into product, as you described, but it can also ladder up into design, into strategy, or sometimes research even has its own standalone pillar. In that case, it will have a seat at the executive table, which is really exciting. But in terms of how we consider features, benefits, and different user requirements, especially when working with product, that's actually our entire job.
Really?
That's absolutely our entire job. That is what we do. We spend time using different types of research methodologies to better understand our customers and our users. So that includes an understanding of them attitudinally, understanding their mindset, understanding their behaviors. And we take this information and we put it into different types of frameworks to help companies and our stakeholders within those companies understand what our customer or our users are like and how that might impact the way that they want to do their work. And from that, they take that information and then business decisions are made. So in terms of something like the front end, and you described like Cash App and how simple it is, how easy to use it is, a lot of this actually has to do with the design of a product. So in research, we uncover the needs of our users and we might classify them in different ways. One popular way of doing this type of needs classification is something called jobs to be done. So that's where an understanding of why a user has picked a particular product to do a specific thing is evaluated. And design is essentially just the process of solving problems.
I love the way you design that. Design is essentially solving users' problem. I love that quote. I'm going to use that.
Yes. And it's really true, because I think when I first went into this field, I was like, oh gosh, like now I'm going to be really aligned to design and, I can't draw worth a lick. And I'm not the type of fashion plate that I thought would be in like a field like design, or am I really like avant-garde or out there? And I think the really cool thing about design is that's actually not what it's about. It really is about how do you solve problems for people and how do you make your product something useful to them? That's why there are fields like service design, for example, where you're actually not even drawing anything. You're figuring out how processes work to solve problems for users.
The workflow. You figure out what the workflow is and how to serve your customers better. And then you add the design functionality on top of it to bring that to life. Would you agree?
Exactly. So like the images, the depictions, the end creative things you might see in an app, they're meant for the user to be able to do something. And we really work closely as a user researcher, we work closely with designers to help them understand these needs and problems so that they can create solutions.
The next question is, do you follow the agile approach in design? And I know that agile is actually, like many of the software company, they have this very much scrum type of approach, and they try to build a feature very fast, and they optimize and iterate over a period of time and make it very, very quick. Do you do something similar like that?
Different design teams that I've worked with use different approaches. So some do use agile, where there is quick definition of product requirements and then various sprints associated with getting that work done rapidly. Some actually don't. So I think one of the things that's really been helpful, especially in startups in particular, being nimble and being quick, being able to adapt quickly is really more important. So that might mean we use an agile methodology to be able to design something, but we might do something different too. Sometimes we'll do some parallel design work on multiple options at the same time, or different things. And I'm not speaking specifically about Cash App, but in general, what I've seen in the market, it's completely different based on the company, the needs, what the preferences are. I think our job as UX research is to better understand the requirements for the design team and what information can be helpful to them regardless of what stage that they are at. So are they at a stage where they're going through rapid prototyping? What research methodologies will be most helpful for them as they're going through their sprints? What do they need to know during their sprints, or maybe even 2 sprints ahead? And being able to find that information and bring it forward so that they can make the decisions they need to make to be able to design the best product possible.
So it sounds like you work very closely with the product team, and also depends on their needs are, and your approach may change depending on what they are doing.
Sometimes there might be a research methodology that will give them a huge, deep breadth of data and information about our customer, but we've got to launch a product in 2 weeks. So then we've got to decide, what do we want to do? How do we want to get this information?
The trade-off.
There's always trade-offs to play.
Given that UX designer is nice to work together in person, and with the pandemic in the past 2.5 years, and obviously everybody's working remotely, how does a group of UX designers work together and still come up with a fantastic design or share the insights with the product team? How do you guys do it? And also, what tools do you guys use to drive brainstorming?
Specifically on the design side, I think during COVID, there are some great tools out there. Like, for example, Figma gets used a lot. And Figma is a great tool for collaborative design. It even has review features in it, like you can put comments in Figma. And this is something that like the design team that I've worked with use in terms of research and like brainstorming, building frameworks, working through design challenges. I've used a lot of different tools. FigJam, which is associated with Figma, is one. Miro, which is another product.
Are you talking about, it's called Figma? How'd you spell that?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Figma is spelled Figma. Yes, it's a cool design tool, and you can use it. You can put libraries in it, so a lot of assets are consistent, and it really helps designers design quickly and consistent with branding principles of whatever product that they're working on, with quick access to assets and libraries, which is really great. They have a product within Figma, or owned by Figma, called FigJam, and that's really a really simple tool to be able to do whiteboarding, exercises, brainstorming, and different types of collaborative activities. I use FigJam a lot alongside Miro to be able to do these kinds of activities remotely.
The user experience and designs are so important, and this is something that marketers tend to overlook. Do you have any suggestion how marketing people should work with UX designers?
So I think one thing that marketers can definitely do that would be really helpful is for them to start building relationships with people on the UX side, even if they're not working together, understand what they do, understand their work, understand the design challenges that they're facing, because they have this really in-depth understanding, often driven by UX research, of the customer that is currently using the product. And a lot of things when it comes to value propositions or what features are really working well for customers, what are really frequently used features, what features bring the most value to users. Those are all things that we spend a lot of time working on, evaluating and advising on. And those are things that could be incredibly useful when creating marketing messaging, when building white papers, artifacts, information that can really help promote a product. And this is also really great information to be able to share, especially on the B2B side with your sales teams, of like what users are finding particularly exciting or useful about the product, or even just from a UX perspective, what problems are we solving for users and how does the product do it? Because that is actually what we spend our time doing. When I was on the marketing side, when there were challenges from a customer perspective with a product, my job was to disposition those challenges and reposition the product so that they wanted to still use it. What would have been so helpful to know is that were these known user problems to begin with? Like, how could I have been better prepared when creating my spin to be able to identify what are the advantages or disadvantages of a product? So I think that's one area.
And most of the time, even though when I was positioning software products, I did not talk to UX designers extensively, or even, or lack of, if you will. And now come to think of it, to actually understand how they designed and what kind of information they have, definitely would have helped me in terms of writing the messaging and also positioning statements. I hear you 100%. So it sounds like your recommendation is, if you are B2B marketers, and especially on software or SaaS-based platforms, not just have the relationship with your product team or your product marketing people, but also trying to understand some of the design elements and working very closely with the UX designers. And they have the information that you can tap into and possibly can also help you in terms of your marketing outreach.
And I think the other thing too I would recommend is being really aware that UX is really kind of everyone's problem in the organization, everyone's opportunity for a solution. UX doesn't end when somebody is just in your product. UX is the entire experience of how they discover the product and how the product helps them in their life. And so design feels, again, like this scary, different thing, but it's really just the process we use to solve problems. So whether you are designing creative or you are designing a product, you're still trying to solve a problem for the user. And I think keeping that in mind could be really helpful.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. What you are trying to say is broaden in terms of how you look at the product. It's not just the finished product with the product feature, but in terms of look a little bit deeper into it. Look at the design of the product and look at how it's actually done and bring that essence out. Love it. Love it. The next question I have is, what are some of the key design elements, like kind of like a design 101, that you have learned over time that you think sales and marketing people should be aware of?
One of the things that you mentioned also is understanding feature prioritization, importance of different features to customers. That is something on the user research side that we spend a lot of time understanding.
Sure.
We're usually trying to understand that in terms of how do we influence a product roadmap? So what should we invest resources in developing and building first? What should we invest resources in trying to improve or change? But from a customer perspective, when it comes to marketing, it can be highly useful to know what do customers most value, how to position that, how to message that. And that's one area where I think the design process can really intersect well with the marketing process. I think, again, and I keep repeating it, but I feel like it's something that was such an eye-opener to me, that design really is just the process of solving problems for our customer. So being able to take that mindset into the work I did on the marketing side of the problem I'm trying to solve is discoverability. The problem I'm trying to solve is having somebody understand what my product does and being able to actually take on that design lens. And I think finally, and this is something that happens in a lot of organizations, I want to say across the board, I think we've all heard of something called tech debt. And that's when you are rushing to build a product. Oftentimes you are a little bit sloppy in terms of the code or whatnot, because getting the product out there quickly and meeting the needs of the customer with that product in whatever way you can is more important than perfection on the technical side. What happens on the research side is we do that too. We are also oftentimes under pressure, get a product out there. And what we might not always do is be able to build up the depth of knowledge that we might have needed to really understand this customer deeply. And I think actually on the marketing side, you feel this the most of any organization.
Truly agree. Especially trying to understand your customers deeply. That's the term I use all the time. It's not just like have a bias persona, but really understand your customers. When I say understand your customers, can you understand your customer deeply? So I think we are pretty much on the same page, and you use like design depth. I love that.
Yeah, insight debt. So absolutely. And that's exactly where one of the things that we're trying to do as a function or in our craft is be able to shift away. There's something in design called a double diamond, where the first part of the diamond is very much about divergence, discovery, and understanding the customer. And then the second part is about defining the problem and being able to actually start prototyping or building solutions around it. A lot of research today kind of focuses more on that evaluative second diamond, but that first diamond is so important. And it's really important that we understand that, because it's not just helpful for us from a solving problems for our user perspective. It's helpful for people downstream, like marketing, that get to take these products and market them because they really understand the user. It also helps us understand predictability in terms of user or customer behavior. When you understand the customer deeply, you're more likely to know how they're going to behave or what they're going to need. When we are only focusing on, does this prototype work? Does someone know how to navigate it? We lose all of that other richness that's really helpful. So I think as marketers, being able to understand kind of these processes that we use from a design perspective to design great products, and using marketing research to complement our work and understand how to utilize the user research parts could be really interesting.
When you share all these insights, it makes me think that you obviously made a very smooth transition from being a marketer to a UX designer. Do you have any advice to share with all of us in terms of how to make that transition?
I actually consider myself to be somewhat of a career change artist, because I moved from finance into marketing many, many years ago.
Oh, you did? Me too.
Like, if you have this deep innate desire to build or create, you have to keep changing it up and like moving.
And also, it's kind of like a self-improvement. You know what I'm saying? It's also self-growth. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
After I'm in the field for too long, I was like, you know what? I kind of need to do something else.
I bet this is not the last career change I've made career-wise for me professionally. I can see myself doing so many more and different things, but for now, I really love where I am. So it worked out well. But I think some of the things to keep in mind, especially if you are trying to shift from marketing into like the field of UX, or really from anywhere into the field of UX, is that UX is a really new field. And that's actually a huge advantage when you want to be a career shifter. Most people in this field had careers before this field. They came from somewhere else. Academia is kind of the most common one that we see and hear about a lot, because people have traditionally studied social sciences and they're social scientists. They understand these research methodologies. But I promise you, nothing that I do in my work is rocket science. And if anything, figure out the transferable skills that you have.
What are some of the transferable skills that you have or you possess that actually help that transition, say from finance to marketing, marketing to design?
So I think I already thought a lot like a researcher. I loved building frameworks. I loved putting information into ways that was digestible. So that was a really great, easy skill to be able to transition. And even the way I think about my transition is on that. And I have a mental model that I utilize when I'm evaluating researchers to hire, even just evaluating my own performance. And what's interesting is that I would say 90% of my background was transferable, because The only area in my research mental model is in terms of research experience and methodology. That was not a hardcore, strong part of my marketing experience, but it was something I was able to develop and learn through job crafting. But other things like communication, stakeholder management and influence, product sense, and leadership.
Yeah, communication skill. It's a very holistic communication skills that you are talking about, right? The stakeholder management, the communications, how do you communicate with a diverse of teams? And I think that is a very important transferable skills. Yeah.
What makes a great UX researcher? Only one of the areas is the area I didn't have the deepest experience in, but how could I go out there and get that experience, whether it was through networking, whether it was through job crafting, whether it was through repositioning work I had done with a new lens, and then being able to understand how to position it and shift. And that's how I was able to shift. So I think anyone can do this. If you have an interest in it, it's absolutely possible.
Another thing I think is also the inability to learn. Obviously, if you really want to make that transition and it's from a one field to a complete new field, you need to be able to have the passion, also the ability and the desire to learn. And I think having that can actually propel you forward.
100%. And actually, that is one thing. If you want to be a researcher, learning has to be part of your innate thing, because all we do is learn. And for me, I'm a lifelong learner. So for me, I don't think there could have been a better field.
So that's changed to a completely different topic. What show are you binge watching right now?
Okay, so I love period pieces and period dramas, so I have to say The Gilded Age on HBO.
I started watching that like about 5 weeks ago. I was like, they did a fantastic job. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Downton Abbey.
Yeah, and I think it's supposed to. It's the prequel, sort of.
Vidhya, thank you so much for coming to my show. It's so wonderful to have you. And I'm so happy that you made that successful transition from marketing to the design field. I'm looking forward for your next transition.
Oh, thank you so much, Pam. I really appreciate you inviting me. It was a pleasure.
All right. Awesome. Thanks a lot. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Never miss an episode of B2B Marketing and More by following us here on YouTube and leave a comment while you're at it. You can also find episodes wherever you get your podcasts.